Dr. Gouveia, would you like to lead the discussion?
Yeah, so sorry about the beginning, but you did a great job. Hi, Karl, again, for the fifth or sixth time. Hope you well. So let me start by saying that every time I hear a talk from you, I feel I'm getting like a second PhD in mathematics, physics, and neuroscience, all in the same place. So yeah, my brain is a bit tired, but I have just one question because I think we have really interesting questions from the audience. So I have two questions. I will make first one. Do you really think that the free energy principle is a truly unifying principle in neuroscience? And that is my first question. And the second question is just, there is a big controversy right now about the information integrated theory that was labeled as untestable and pseudoscientific. So do you recognize those labels in this theory? And do you think the same could be said about your approach to the brain and the mind? So those will be my two questions.
Right. We have to answer those in the remaining 10 minutes. Sorry, they're very challenging. And thank you for those kind comments. So yes, I do think that the free energy principle is a unifying theory simply because it inherits from well, first of all, simply because it inherits from straightforward physics, and it has exactly the same foundations as quantum mechanics and statistical mechanics and classical mechanics, and the basic mechanics is just another flavor of exactly that kind of physics that is specialized when you have a Markov blanket. So it's just a physics of things. In that sense, I think it is unifying, and it's furthermore unifying in the sense that, you know, things that emerge under this framework, everybody recognizes, from sort of reinforcement learning right down to, you know, self-evidencing in the spirit of Jacob Haim. In terms of the more vexed issues about pseudoscience and IIT, in brief, I do not think it is appropriate to call IIT pseudoscience. I think that was something that will probably be removed following the Twitter storm from the peer-reviewed literature, at least, and possibly the open letters. What's the relationship between IIT and the free energy principle? I think that's a slightly more, again, vexed question. The free energy principle is not a theory of consciousness. It's a theory of very basic sentient behavior and self-organization. We'd have to do a lot of work to say what kinds of things could be conscious and have qualitative experiences, and furthermore, a lot more work to define the kinds of generative models that would support certainly things like minimal selfhood and indeed self-awareness. So the free energy principle doesn't do that. You can apply the free energy principle to certain generative models and start to ask, you know, what kinds of systems would you need? And the answer you come up with is actually quite close to IIT in one respect, although there's a lot missing from IIT from my perspective. But the point I'm making, IIT is meant to be a theory of consciousness, so it's got its own rules to play by. Having said that, many of the sort of more basic formal consequences of the axioms of IIT do emerge for free under the free energy principle. So I actually see a lot of consilience between the conclusions of IIT and the kinds of certainly, you know, in terms of the information theoretic reading of the free energy principle, there's lots of similarity. But you know, that's one, you know, I repeat, there are things in IIT, there are things in the free energy principle that are not in IIT, and IIT comes from a different stable. It's an axiomatic theory. It's not a first principles theory.
Right. Perfect. So we have two questions from the audience. So the first question, I will make it very briefly. So it's about the relationship between your work and neuropsychoanalysis. So do you think your work can give a new flavor to psychoanalysis and achieve what Freud meant by scientific psychology?
Yes. Yeah, I think, yes, I think that's a great question. Yes, I think you can. But more importantly, scholars in neuropsychoanalysis think you can. So people like Mark Soames and his colleagues, have, I think, put an enormous amount of work and thought into exactly a sort of a revisiting of Freudian formulations in the 21st century using the lens of the free energy, or applying the free energy principle, and I think in a very compelling way. Just, one reason you might think that would work is that when Freud was trying to formulate his notions, he would have been acutely aware of the work of Helmholtz, and Helmholtz himself was himself trying to find a generic expression for a neural energy that explained the kind of behaviors and sense making that we're talking about, above and beyond his thermodynamic Helmholtz free energy. So he was on a mission to, I think, both of them were on a mission to try and find some kind of free energy, but both of them predated Feynman, and it was Feynman who actually formalized and naturalized this particular application of free energy and understanding it in terms of rendering an impossible inference problem, a marginalization problem, into a tractable optimization problem. So you will see in the writings of Freud, it's all, it's all about optimization, forces and repressions and the like, which inherits, I think, directly from the mathematical structure of the free energy. I should also note that, had Freud and Helmholtz been able to talk to somebody like E.T. James, 50, 60 years later, they may also have been able to naturalize their definitions of their free energies, or the neuronal energies anyway, in a way which would look, I think, formally identical to the way that we do it now. And indeed, you can read the free energy principle as just a different kind of or interpretation of James's maximum entropy principle. It's slightly different because it brings to the table the Markov blanket, but otherwise there's a common story, I think, over the century that could, certainly includes Freud. Yeah.
Okay. So I will make one more question from the audience. So I'm not sure how to pronounce the name, but it's Catalina Balam, and she asked, are there potential applications of these principles in the development of advanced assistive technologies for individuals with disabilities, particularly in terms of enhancing their ability to interact with the world? Thank you.
Right. Yeah, that's an excellent question. Yeah, in principle, to understand how you couple to the world in a formal way certainly gives you certain perspectives on, say, sensory substitution, and certainly gives you certain constraints on restoring lost motor function and the like. And in principle, you certainly can apply the free energy principle. I should say that in some way it probably already has been applied. I repeat, the free energy principle is not some new idea that replaces all existing idea. It's unifying in the sense that it just naturalizes existing ideas within a sort of a formal framework. But one particularly interesting application, at least conceptually, of this, say, to neuro rehabilitation, is the notion that the brain is built to destroy free energy gradients, or minimize prediction errors, or learn from prediction errors. So prediction errors are the source of learning. So if you want to, in a neuro rehabilitation context, optimize learning, what you would want to do is to present them with the right kind of prediction errors. So contrary to commonsensical or intuitive practice, you wouldn't get them to rehearse a lost function. You'd actually make it very difficult for them and provide lots of prediction errors in terms of, so that they could use those prediction errors to actually learn most efficiently. So that's one very small, very colloquial example of how you might apply the insights of a generic sort from this view of active engagement and active sensing in a therapeutic context. I could wax lyrical about applications in psychiatry, where you get where you leverage the notion of the brain as an inference machine to understand psychopathology in terms of false inference and what the lost mechanisms are there. But we don't have time to go there, but just to celebrate the cleverness of that question.
Perfect. So I think we have to go. Thank you for having me again. And I will now give the word to Christina.
Yes, thank you very much again. Thank you, Professor Friston. It's been truly an honor to have you here, and we are very grateful that you could join us today. And thank you, Dr. Gouveia, for leading the discussion.